External validity. The students, we have been discussing internal validity and external validity a number of times when we wanted to discuss the avoiding of errors related to sampling, right? So external validity is basically related to the generalizability of the study, and we must have both of these types of validity in our studies. Internal validity, when we want to make sure that whatever is happening to the dependent variable is just only and only due to the manipulation of independent variable, right? So if we have this surety, then our study is internally valid. But then there is another requirement from your study, and that is that whatever is happening to your sample is transferable, that is generalizable to the whole population group of your study, right? So if you are making sure that it is generalizable, then our study is externally valid, right? So while sampling procedures, we must be making sure that our samples are free from sorts of errors, and our study is externally valid, right? So that is something which is required from a good sound study, right? That it is externally valid. And externally valid is a study which is generalizable, right? So external validity is related to the degree of generalizability. And external validity actually refers to this question, that can the findings of the study be generalized to the whole group, to the whole population, right? So if the answer is yes, then your study is valid. If it is not generalizable, then your study is not externally valid. And this is particularly required from a quantitative study, when the data collection procedures are based on a quantitative methodology, right? So we need to have this generalizability. In qualitative studies, since our samples are most of the time very small, then we are not actually creating a study which is generalizable, but that is the requirement from qualitative studies. Overall, and as a general rule of thumb, our studies must be generalizable, right? Our samples, the data which is drawn from the samples, is generalizable to the whole population, to the whole group, right? So that is called external validity. And one point which is really important here is that external and internal types of validities are not exclusive of each other, because they are connected. They are, together they make a good study possible. Because when whatever is happening to your dependent variable, when it is just because of the manipulation of the independent variable, then that's internal validity. And when a study is internally valid, then the samples, which are taken and which are treated and the data are drawn from them, that is basically generalizable, and that is transferable to the whole population and to the whole universe of the study, right? So the transferability of the situation is actually the focus of external validity. And external validity may have some threats, right? We may have some points which we must be keeping in mind, that our study is externally valid when we are just facing these threats, and we are avoiding them, and we are avoiding the sampling errors, right? So the first point is that our samples, our participants, must be the true representatives of the population, right? So their characteristics, their attributes, and their features are actually the features, attributes, and characteristics of the population, right? So our samples are representing very truly the population, right? So that is the point which we must be taking care of. So this is actually the true representativeness which is required from the samples. The samples must be true representatives, so that the end results are generalizable. And then we can also make sure that the samples which are selected have the characteristics of the population, right? And we must also consider the setting of the study, right? The setting of the study must be realistic. It should be from a real world, right? So we are not actually creating something which is based on artificial laboratory work, right? So whatever we are doing is related to the realistic world, and this realistic world is where our samples are existing. They can actually transfer that situation to the population, right? So that is the threat of setting of the study. Then we also are required to consider that the timing of the study must also be realistic, because if our timing is not realistic, then we may not be actually having an externally valid data, right? So that's a requirement which we must be clarifying. And the situation regarding timing is basically similar to the nature and to the setting of the population, right? So we must be taking care of all these three things, that our participants have the characteristics of the population. Then our setting of the study is based on real world, real life situation. This is not something which is artificially created. And then the timing of the study is also appropriate. For the last point, you just keep in mind that whatever happened 60 years ago may not be generalizable to today. So this time gap, that is actually something which is influencing the external validity. So we must be taking care of the timing factor as well.